everybody who's listening tonight, a warm welcome to all of you. You'll be hearing from each of the candidates. They'll be giving their opening remarks. Then they will be asked questions. The very same question will be asked of each candidate. Each candidate will have an equal time to respond to each question that's asked. And we will go through again by alphabetical first name order and asking questions and answers. And then we will flip that order and do reverse alphabetical first name order, just to kind of not make it so monotonous for all of you. We have 90 minutes here tonight. We plan to stop at 8:30. I will be keeping the candidates to their time. They have 2 minutes to provide their opening statements, and then they will each have 1.5 minutes to provide answers to the questions put to them. Please know that if you do hear them stop talking mid-sentence, it's because I've muted them. We are keeping everybody to their time so we can get through as much questions as we could. It's not because they stopped answering the question, but because we are trying to keep this in an orderly fashion. For everyone that has watched recently the presidential debates, you know that people like to talk over each other. Well, that's not going to happen here tonight. First of all, we've got 4 wonderful candidates, and they wouldn't do that to each other. But secondly, we have, again, the mute function. So that will be used, and it'll create an orderly process for everybody. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce tonight's moderator, Pam Estes.
Thank you, Jimmy. Welcome, school board candidates, parents, and community leaders, and a huge thank you to our esteemed Boys and Girls Club board member, Jimmy Azadian. I'd also like to thank Jennifer and Danny from the Boys and Girls Club team who work behind the scenes to make all this possible, and of course Tyler and KXFM. So on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club of Laguna Beach, we're proud to play a role in this important forum that will help inform our community's choices for filling our school board seats this election season. To say that this has been a transformative time in all of our lives is an understatement. In my role as CEO for the Boys and Girls Club of Laguna Beach, my mantra throughout this new normal has been to search for opportunity in the challenges we encounter, and there's been plenty of both. At every level of our organization, our collective mandate has been to base every decision we make on how we can best help children continue to stay connected and have a sense of belonging, know they matter and that their voice is valued, and ultimately strengthen their resiliency to overcome whatever challenges they may face. And of course, understanding the critical role that play has in a child's development, making sure that we give our kids the chance to be kids. Now more than ever, together, we must catalyze the community to meet the evolving needs of young people to learn, grow, and thrive in a safe, fun, and relationship-rich environment. Now, back to Jimmy.
Thank you. And I would like to just turn it over to Tyler for just a second, if he could share with us what KXFM radio is about. And then I'd like to go through how it is that the questions are going to be put to the candidates. So Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Again, I am indeed the founder of KXFM, and tonight's forum is broadcast on 104.7 and also kxfmradio.org. So thanks so much, the Boys and Girls Club, for allowing us to partner tonight and co-present this forum. You'll be able to listen to the entirety of this as a podcast on our website as well. Our radio station's had a close relationship with our local kids, many of whom who are members of the Boys and Girls Club. Since our inception in 2012, we've broadcast each Laguna Beach High School football game with play-by-play commentary. We've broadcast CIF playoffs of other sports as well, and we're the only FM station in Southern California that does this. We've welcomed more than a dozen high school interns to work with us and learn the art of broadcasting, and we also run a popular summer radio camp for our local students. And finally, this year, we've worked with the high school to navigate the challenge of graduation during a pandemic by broadcasting their drive-through graduation ceremony live on the air. Our mission statement reads to enrich our listeners with the discovery of alternative music, views, and culture that elevates Laguna Beach on a global scale. In other words, we greatly value that our students who come out of LBUSD are critical thinkers, globally minded, and willing to challenge the status quo. As one of our past high school interns, Cole Hunt, put it in a letter to City Council, working for KXFM not only taught me invaluable lessons, but also secured my current path. KXFM radicalized my passion for radio, and it provided a home in a community that I felt provided far too few outlets of expression for those like me. Cole is now the music director at UT Austin's radio station. We think this election, both locally and nationally, is perhaps the most important of our time, and we strive this election season to disseminate as much crucial information as possible to allow voters to make the best, most informed decision. The power of community radio to connect us to one another has really shown during COVID-19, and tonight I think is another example of that. Check out our website for interviews with some of our other city council candidates as well. Thank you so much for your inclusion tonight, and thanks for your support of independent FM radio in Laguna Beach. Good luck to all the candidates.
Thank you, Tyler. And I just wanted to mention that hearing Tyler speak and Pam speak about KXFM Radio and the Boys and Girls Club, you'll now hear from each of the four candidates. Going into tonight's forum, I feel so proud to be a part of this community. I know we all say that here in Laguna Beach, but I really do feel very proud. And it's because of people like Pam, like Tyler, like Jan, like Amy, like Kelly and Sherry, that we can say that about this wonderful place. So let me tell you about how the questions got selected. They were selected by the parents. Parents wrote to Pam at the Boys and Girls Club and said, here are some questions that I think you ought to ask the candidates. And Pam and Jennifer and other staff members of the Boys and Girls Club went through a selection process where we basically went through and tried to take the questions that were repeated and not ask and group them together, and then weed through them so that we can ask as many questions as possible so that we can have a representation of all four school units: Top of the World, Elmore Elementary, Middle School, Thurston Middle School, Laguna Beach High School, and those questions can be asked of the candidates tonight. We don't have time to ask all the questions that were put forward. We'd love to be able to do that. I don't know that the candidates would love us to do that, but what we did was we sent them the top 25 questions. And we said, of these 25 questions, tonight, you won't know which ones, but 8, 9 questions will be asked of you. That way they have some idea of what the parents are thinking and what the parents would like them to talk about. We also got some questions from students too. So I'll throw the students in there too, what the students would like them to talk about, which is very important. So that was the process. And without further ado, I will go ahead and, I know I said that before, without further ado, but now it's really true. I'll turn it over to Pam and we'll start the forum.
Jimmy, are the candidates going to give their intro first?
Two-minute intro.
All right.
And we'll start with Amy.
Okay, Amy, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all having us here this evening, and I appreciate all the attendees for taking the time out of this evening, out of their evenings rather, and committing to watch this. I am Amy Kramer. I'm a 25-year resident of our wonderful Laguna Beach, and I'm the parent of 3 children. My kids have attended Top of the World, Thurston Middle School, and 2 graduated from the high school and went on to UCLA. I still have 1 student who is an 8th grader at Thurston Middle School. My leadership abilities are well known in the community, and I am fortunate to have worked with so many different people to help make Laguna Beach and our schools a better place. The majority of my volunteer work was working with School Power. I was public relations chair, dinner dance co-chair for 3 years, vice president, and president. In my year as president, we raised over $900,000 for all 4 school districts, and I attribute that to the dedication of our trustees, the donors, and the community. As vice president and president, I collaborated with the administration to find the best programs for our fundraising efforts that best met the goals of the district, and developed relationships with donors and interacted with the community on, to support our large collective community goals. I've collaborated within the community. I worked with a group of residents and council members on the No NKK measure to stop 2 marijuana dispensaries from being installed in our city. We won over 70% of the vote. And I also worked with a large team of concerned residents in the Save the Fireworks campaign to raise funds for the 4th of July fireworks display at Main Beach. I've worked recently with a group of district parents on the GPA Matters campaign to bring back the successful honors grade weighting program to our high school students. I have a master's in speech communication, taught English conversation in Japan, and currently I support our family-owned business, and I am a paraeducator for special education students. And everything I do,
All right, we'll now hear from Kelly. I'll try to turn off this annoying timer.
Jimmy, I think you said it was Jan next.
I'm sorry.
You did.
I meant
It's
Jan,
fine.
sorry. Jan, on my screen it's Kelly.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. It makes sense to me that the three of you are hosting this because the district has had close relationships with the Boys and Girls Club for many years and with the radio station. The football games are wonderful when they're broadcast. And Jimmy moved here and jumped right in and has taken leadership positions from day one. So it's great that you're providing this opportunity for more people. It is the largest forum by far, and it's very important. I've been a resident since 1964. I'm a UCI graduate. I have a studio art degree. I have 3 teaching credentials. I taught adult ed art classes for Laguna years ago. I have taught private art classes, and I ran a preschool childcare center at the Methodist Church next to the old Aliso School, which is now Lang Park. Laguna provides a very successful educational experience for our students. It's highly ranked, it's highly thought of and known across the country. Our graduates attend colleges and universities across the country and abroad. And one of the things that we strive to instill in them is to be a lifelong learner. That is invaluable and is something that I am myself as well. District families come to Laguna. It's a district that people move to, not only for the general education, but also the services we provide for special education students and for our English learners. Like the other candidates, I had 2 children that went through school, and I was involved in PTAs and committees and goal setting all along the way. I've done a lot of community service for decades, mostly working with surplus food pickup and delivery, and also with Meals on Wheels and with youth sports, as most of our parents do. We depend heavily on volunteers. It's a huge importance in our community. I am known for my preparation, for my attendance at meetings. I don't miss meetings, for asking thoughtful questions, for working collaboratively, and for totally understanding that it's a 5 board member board and that we need to work together as a unit. My dedication to fiscal stewardship.
Thank you, Jan. We'll now hear from Kelly Osborne.
Thank you, Jimmy. My name's Kelly Osborne. I have a 5th and a 7th grader, and I'm going to start today by sharing my priorities, then go on to a little bit on my background, and last I'll conclude with why I'm qualified for this school board position. 3 priorities I have. First, I'll focus on continuous student success. I believe that all students can succeed, even with the challenges we're facing in light of COVID-19. Second, I'd like to address social intolerance. I want to make it a priority to expand research-based strategies to support a more anti-racist school climate. My 3rd priority is to advance environmental stewardship. I want to improve school sustainability, work towards net zero emission school facilities, and provide effective environmental education for all students. A little bit about my background. I'm a 1st-generation college graduate. I earned 2 degrees from UC San Diego. I worked in investment banking for 8 years and then left to move to DC for my husband's job. There I opened and ran a preschool for 4 years. My family moved back here to Laguna Beach about 7 years ago. I got involved in PTA and volunteering in my schools. Many of you I know through that work. You may not know that I'm also a fully credentialed teacher. And in 2018, I earned a master's degree in education. I specialized in e-learning, which is especially relevant during today's times. And last, I want to address why I have the right experience for this office. I served on PTA executive boards for the last 7 years, 3 of which I was PTA president at the school and district level. And I know that I can rely on the positive relationships I built with parents, with teachers, with staff, with administrators, with principals, with all of those people to help lead our school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And now we'll hear from Sherry.
Hi, Jimmy. Thank you so much. And thank you to Pam and yourself and the radio station as well for giving us this opportunity. It is really important, and it's nice to see so many people have attended. If you don't know me, my name is Sherry Morgan. I am a 27-year resident of Laguna Beach, and I've been in our school districts for 17. I have 4 kids. We have 2 in college as athletes and academic honor students, and 2 in the district that are at the middle school at Thurston and as well at the high school. And the high school student is taking APs as well, so I'm familiar with that. I graduated from ASU with a bachelor's degree, and I took courses at UCI. Like many of you, with the high cost of private school, we chose Laguna as our home because of the reputation that the schools had. They have a reputation of being a private school quality education in a public school setting. And that was very appealing. And so by staying involved, that's how I stayed abreast and on top of our kids' education as well as our property tax dollars. With 17 years in the district, I bring forth the level of experience and knowledge. We all have hours in the classroom, and being committee chairs, participants, many of us have been paid and unpaid volunteers for very large projects. I myself co-founded Sports Swap 7 years ago, and I'm delighted to hear that it's going to be running again this year. So stay tuned for that. What sets me apart is my district-wide experience. I've actively participated in over 40+ board meetings and study sessions. I was the advocacy chair for TOW Thurston and the high school. I was elected at TOW for our local control accountability plan, which offers a firsthand experience of the inner workings of the district. I was invited to the committee at the district level, and my involvement in the social emotional parent committee, 3 curriculum studies, principal hiring committees, and the superintendent search helps broaden my experience. I've also attended almost every PTA meeting at all 3 schools for almost all of those years. I take parent education serious, and it's important that we bring forth the best education possible for our students and the best investment of our tax dollars. And lastly, I'm not a teacher. Our board currently is filled with 4.
Thank you, Sherry. All right. So we'll go ahead and turn it over now to Pam, who will jump right into the questions.
All right, this is an amazing panel. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you on these really important topics. The first question is, would you like to see the district provide funding for childcare while schools remain closed or are open only part-time? And please be specific about the funding you envision for such childcare. Amy, you're up first.
Community and oh, sorry, I just saw a thing come up saying I'm unmuted, so good thing. But when Laguna people need help, Laguna people rally, and our community always comes together to find a way to support and uplift one another. I would support the district providing funding for childcare while the schools are closed or only partially open. It's evident that our lives are intertwined with the schedule of our children's education. We plan our working lives, our personal time, and how we budget our finances around the function and scheduling of school. So without having that support system in place, so many families have come to depend on, we indeed need to provide childcare assistance to families who are clearly being affected by this COVID-related absence of site education. All families would apply for assistance, and it would be for the 2021 school year. I would suggest either full or partial funding, and there is an economic uncertainty fund that we have in reserve with a little over 3 million. So I think that that's not a bad idea to use that money towards that. There's also the one-time unassigned reserves that could help families with childcare expenses as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jan, you're up. But let me unmute you first, or ask you to unmute.
I keep pushing the unmute button for her, but someone else must be pushing it at the same time I am. Let's see. I think her screen might be frozen too. Let me see.
No, she's there. Jen, can you try and hit your unmute, please?
I can unmute myself.
You're
Yeah.
good.
There we go.
That's what usually happens. Thank you. It's not at all an unfavorable concept. I would have to do more research on it. I started that today to find out what the legal technicalities are of using school funding on that basis. I know that we have a bus pass program for families that are free and reduced lunch, and there's a whole process to go through to apply. However, this pandemic has put a lot of families into a situation that they're not exactly in that situation, and they need assistance with someone to watch their children while they go to work. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, and we would have to do something that would be on an equitable basis. Some of the funds that Amy mentioned are they still have restrictions on how they can be used, and it would have to be, I'm sure there's processes to go through where powers that are higher than this district would have to give an okay for the funds to be spent in that method and how it would be done equitably. I know the need is there, but I can't give you a solid answer on where the funding would come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Kelly?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was unmuted. Yeah, this is a great question, Pam. I have a background in early education and in childcare, and I love this concept of always striving to fully meet the needs of all of our families. So yes, I think I agree with exploring this option. I think that there's a couple ways to go about it, maybe looking at partners in the community that might be able to enrich learning experiences for students, especially for low income, especially for English learner students who have been most negatively affected by the pandemic. I think that's really important, looking at it from an equity lens. I also know with the reopening of our elementary schools, at 4 full days, and obviously that age group most in need of childcare, that we're really just looking at a solution for 1 day per week to compare it to a pre-pandemic situation. So I think, yeah, looking at funding maybe through CARES Act, community partners, maybe from the reserve that Amy mentioned, but obviously doing the research that Jan mentioned is a great approach. And I do believe that obviously you guys as Boys and Girls Club is not turning away any family, and you guys do have space in your wonderful programs. And I know you guys were so committed to always staying open even when school was closed, when you could, according to state and county guidelines. So yeah, I really like that concept. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Hi, thank you. That is a great question, and I think it's a service that we really should provide for our community. That's where community and education relationship comes together. These are really unusual times, and so we need some really unusual solutions, and childcare would be something that the district could potentially offer. There are districts in Denver and in Texas and Colorado, Colorado, that offer childcare for their teachers and staff, and then some select working parents. I think we could offer that. I think that we can offer some creative solutions with some similar, creative options for collaborations between the schools with siblings. I think tapping into the Boys and Girls Club would be a great option, as well as tapping into their staff, because with the cohorting, we're going to have some issues with the elementary school. So if we could bring that staff back onto the campuses and perhaps allow the Boys and Girls Club to expand, we can expand the partnership that we have together. As far as funding, Amy mentioned some good opportunities for funding and knowing and learning whether or not we can transfer money for this particular instance, but it is a special situation. It is a special circumstance. The board has done a phenomenal job saving money over the last many years. We had 25% increase in our property taxes just in the last 4 years, and they have built a very nice reserve fund. And this is an emergency situation, and that's when we're supposed to be using and tapping into some issues, some things like that. So that would be good to explore. There's also a program from the government called the FFCRA Leave Act. This allows paid sick leave for employees, and it also has a provision. So if you're
All right. Great answers, everyone. Now we're on to our second question. What have other districts around us done to reopen their schools while we have remained closed, such as Corona Del Mar, Dana Point, Aliso Viejo, and Irvine? And why were they able to open their schools sooner and more robustly than we have? As a smaller and more well-funded school district, does our limited opening plan for elementary students and no immediate opening plan for middle and high school students make sense? And this time we're going to start with you, Sherry.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sherry. For some reason, there we go. Okay. Try it one more time.
You'll need to unmute one more
Hit
time.
unmute one more time, Sherry.
Okay.
There we go.
So the various districts, there are many districts. As of last week, by the end of the week, there was anticipated to be 40% of the local school districts open. And the fact that ours is not is very concerning. And I feel that the district not being open is a result of our leadership style. The Stronger Together guidebook that all of the schools are using as a foundation came out in June 15th. It's at that time that districts started coming together, making their plan and exploring what the options were and what they needed. We created a whole new learning model that created a whole different level of problems. And I think that's part of the issue. Additionally, the fact that we don't have, I don't believe that our teachers don't want to come back. I believe that our teachers want to come back to a very safe environment. And the last board meeting, it was stated that we were still anticipating supplies. So I think that's something really important. So I think it all kind of comes back to the leadership style and the fact that we tried to do something totally different and reinvent the wheel when we should have stayed in the quad system or a semester system and come up with some creative options that way. So thank you.
Great. And Kelly.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Kelly.
Sorry. So I think I disagree with the question as wording that we are not open as robustly as other school districts are. So I guess I'll break the response into two parts, the elementary and then the secondary. I believe that our elementary schools did open today with a robust 4 full day in-person plan. Many other surrounding elementary schools were not able to offer that robust of a plan, possibly using an AM/PM model, pushing kids that needed an extended day into situations where cohorts are combined, or pushing them outdoors, which they have to cancel in case of bad weather. So I think our well-funded and perhaps smaller nature and our leadership allowed us to reopen in a robust way for our elementary schools. We also do have a date for our secondary schools to open in mid-November. We see all around us staggered starts, and I believe that's what our district is doing. I believe we want to open our secondary schools, but also stay open. And I think we are an innovative small district, and we do try new things, and the trimester system is not ideal for anybody. I've got a kid in it, and I hear a lot of parents that's not ideal. But that's what we're trying to do to keep our entire community safe, to reopen our schools and to stay open. And I believe that we're very close to that. I'm trying to be forward-looking versus backward-looking, and we're just a mere few weeks away from that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jan? You have to unmute.
Yeah, there you go.
I share the same concern that Kelly had with the phrasing of the question, but I would also like to say that Corona Del Mar is part of Newport Mesa. Newport Mesa teachers, if you follow the news, have attempted to stop the opening. They pleaded with their board to wait and to hold off. They felt that the district wasn't ready to start, and they've gone about that to attempt to stop it legally, which will cost their district funds. Both Aliso Viejo and Dana Point are in the Capistrano district. There's also concern among teachers in the Capistrano district that the safety precautions are not in place there as well. And Saddleback behind us, which wasn't mentioned, but Saddleback teachers are considering a strike. So I think that it is not going smoothly in a lot of districts because it's really a lot of unknowns, and it's a lot to stagger and to challenge. How do you get the kids back in these cohorts, keep them in the cohorts so that you can handle any outbreaks? As you know, we are offering testing. We're offering free testing to families. 200 families at the elementary level took advantage of that, and over 90% agreed to share the information with the schools because we cannot mandate testing and we cannot mandate that they share the results. Out of that, we had 3 positive cases. Over the weekend, our staff worked with the public health in a flurry to do the contact tracing to find out the students that had been in contact with those 3 so that all of them would be staying home as we started the opening today. So it's not an easy task. It's not simple. And our overall goal is to get kids back and to get them back safely, but also they'll.
Thank you, Jan. And Amy, now it's your turn.
Thanks. I think as a smaller district, we should be able to reopen all of our schools. We have 3,000 students for 4 schools, which is far less than 1 high school in the Capo district. We have greater flexibility in how we can use our spaces, how we can use our financial resources, and all of this needs to be reflected in our actions towards getting the schools open. Certainly, we want our teachers and staff to feel safe and our students to be safe. And I think that given the amount of parents who have requested on-site education, we should be providing that hands-on teaching that all of our students need. Tomorrow, I go back to Capo, and I will be working with the teachers, and I know that they're excited to get back in the classroom. I think the kids are ecstatic about it, and I think that it's one of those things that everyone's right. It will never be perfect, but if you don't start taking an action forward, you'll never move. So I think that this is appropriate, and I think Laguna Beach would be well served to start opening all of our schools up as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. The New York Times recently reported that high schoolers have the most to lose when it comes to school closure and distance learning. Why prioritize elementary school when high school students may have more at stake? Scholarships, AP tests, national merit, etc. Would you agree that high schoolers benefit most from being on campus to put their best foot forward for college, and that there is more at stake for them as far as their futures are concerned? And we'll start again with Amy this time.
Okay, I'll unmute. I think that all of the students have something to lose. You know, elementary parents are worried about their kids in 1st grade learning to read. Middle school parents are worried about the lack of socialization and motivation that their kids are having sitting behind a screen all day. And yes, high school parents are worried about their 11th graders' chances at taking the PSAT, which provides important merit awards. The AP and honors classes that show rigor, but now are accelerated. The sports programs that are considered a pathway for many students to scholarship and college entry. So all students have a lot to lose, which is why I think that we should be getting our students back in school as soon as we can. We have to turn it up a little bit, and we have to make this work for our kids, or they're the ones that are going to suffer from the lack of interaction, retention, and missed opportunities. I don't know that one grade has it worse than any other, and certainly no parent would think that either. We all care about our kids, and their needs are definitely important to every single parent out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Jan?
Okay. You know, a few weeks ago, we were hearing that it was the elementary that was the most critical, that the elementary students could not really successfully do the screen learning, and that it was urgent to get them back. And I would say that we focused on that as being a more manageable group because they are not changing classes. And so we had less teachers need to change the classroom, because at the high school level, when they come back, the students will stay in the same class and the teachers will move. But it's now it has shifted, because now we had, starting today, with our elementary students coming back a lot of days with a lot of hours, and only Friday that they will be at home. Now the focus seems to have shifted that it's the secondary students who are suffering the most. I'm not sure, and I agree with Amy on that you could single out any group that suffers the most. I think a lot of that goes on individual students, individual families, and whatever handicaps they have in providing the access to internet and things at home, or to just the nature of a student, the dynamic. A family that has 3 children at 3 different levels has a whole different dynamic than a family that has 1 student to work with. So I think we do have a plan. We are moving forward. We are going toward it. All the students will come back. I would just like to add, the sports are practicing now. CIF gave them a chance to do summer practice. I see them up at the high school, and I see the athletic director continually working to keep them apart. It's very difficult. Kids gravitate toward each other. They want to stand right next to each other. It's a real challenge, but they are back and they're practicing.
Thank you, Jan. Kelly?
Thank you. Yeah, I want to just start off the response here to express some empathy for all parents, regardless of what age child they have here. I think parents and children all have lost a lot, and I want to make sure that everybody that's out there that's listening knows that I truly believe that. And you know, we have to move forward. We have to have a vision for the future. I don't think it's a who lost the most or who's losing the most right this minute. What we know and what I know, I have a degree in human development from UC San Diego that I think has guided some of our decisions, is that, you know, how young children learn and develop does not change. We know that young children don't have the same executive functioning skills as older students. Their prefrontal cortex isn't as developed, which controls things like focus, paying attention, planning, remembering. You know, they're not as digitally literate. So, you know, working in a distance learning environment really puts them at a disadvantage compared to middle and high school. But, you know, that's comparing, right? Who's suffering most. I think we have to accept that about how young children grow and develop. And that's why we've done some of those actions to reopen the elementary schools first. I also think for high school parents, there's a light out there. I see a lot of adaptations taking place, whether it's college admittance process.
Thank you, Kelly. And now Sherry.
Hi, thank you. I personally do not think that we should be prioritizing any grade. Every student has different needs. The elementary school needs could be different than the high school needs, but they are all very relevant. The middle school as well. I remember, you know, when I had 4 kids in the district, having them work together was something that I kept bringing back to the board. You know, having days off be the same, having some kind of a collaboration with schedules. And that's really important, because when you have kids coming and going, even once we open, when you have kids coming and going all day at different times and coming to school and leaving school and coming home and turning around and going back out, it's very difficult to do much besides that, as I've known for the last 17 years. But I think there's some really interesting things to keep in mind. According to EdSource, in the July 17th publication, kids at the high school have the most success with spiraling techniques, where topics like math and science are taught in blocks, chapters, or units of study. Over a short period of time are instead in smaller chunks and then spread out over a longer period of time. And then the teachers will come back and touch on these topics over and over again. I think that the trimester model is not ideal. I think it was really a disservice to our students. Parents are finding it's very difficult to find tutors for the trimester pace. And the way that the programs are being taught, they say that it would be, you know, diving deeper, but that's not possible. Teachers everywhere are stating how we have to really skim down on some of the content to get it all done in the right period of time. And that's.
Thank you, Sherry. On to our next question. Are you in favor of term limits for school board members? And if so, what should the term limit be? And this time we're going to start with Sherry.
And I have to unmute. Well, you guys muted me, which is good. Mute is good. I think my husband would like the mute button. Term limits. Absolutely. I think we should have term limits. I have talked about this question around the community, and I originally had thought 2 terms would be the right amount of time, but then I was told by somebody, they brought up the fact that if they're brand new and don't know much about the board, it's going to take maybe 12 years. But I think we need the term limits. Right now, our board governs in a way that was way back in the 1990s when they were calling for reform of school boards, where the superintendent acted as a go-between on information. And we need to be able to have open door communications, two-way communications. We need to be able to reach out to our community a lot easier, and we need to have a constant flow. Communication is really the key to anything. And so, yes, I think we should have term limits, and I would be flexible. 2 or 3 would be good, but then I think they need to rotate off for a while and allow fresh ideas and relevant education currently brought forward.
Thank you, Sherry. And now, Kelly?
Thank you. Yeah, in regards to term limits, you know, I think your knowledge base and your skill as a school board member does build over time. You know, I can reflect as, you know, spending time as president at PTA units, even president at our PTA council, which serves all 4 schools. And I think you become a more skilled leader. You become better at governing over time. So I like a mix of experience and backgrounds on a school board. I really wouldn't want to see 5 parents that all had kindergarten students on our school board, just like I wouldn't want to see 5 older experienced community members that weren't in touch with what was going on in the schools on our school board. So I like a mix. I like that everybody has a diverse background. I think the voters of a community decide by their vote who will govern best. And, you know, I think, you know, the concept that just because somebody has served a long time and that should be stopped with a term limit, I don't see a need for that as long as they're still contributing and are in touch with what's happening in our community. Thank you.
Pam, you're now muted.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us navigating this, the mute, unmute. Okay, thank you, Kelly. And now, Jan, you're done.
I think I'm the featured person that this question is around, and I respect that. It's a discussion that takes place in lots of cities and across the nation. There are merits to both sides, and we were going to discuss this at a board level at some point. Things that we had on the table, like having a preschool program offered by the district to parents, as the state would like to have a state preschool program, were all put in abeyance as we have been dealing with this pandemic for over 6 months. So we will get back to those kinds of things, and we'll probably have a discussion about term limits and whether it fits in this district. I will say that there were 2 times when I was actually appointed to the board because there was no election held. There were no challenging candidates to the incumbents that were up for election. And there were other times where it really was very little. There might be 1 other candidate. Sometimes it's almost like it goes, there isn't a lot of interest. There's more interest this year because of some topics that have been going on. The first time I ran after Aliso School closed, which is a huge thing to happen in a district, there were 10 candidates. So it really runs the gamut. We've had some great service. Betsy Jenkins served 12 years, Ketta Brown served 12 years. And I was sorry to see both of them go. They were highly effective board members, very involved, very knowledgeable. So I think you really need to balance it. And it does take some time to get a handle on how a district runs, how school financing works. It's different than other financing organizations. So it's worth it to have the discussion, and it's an appropriate question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And Amy.
Thank you. Yes, I do believe that term limits is an appropriate thing to install on our board. Like many committees and boards, when you have new people coming in, you're kind of updating the people that are participating. And when people are leaving, it gives other people the chance to join the board, and it makes them feel like they have a chance to do so. And I would say that probably a 3-term for our board is appropriate for our school district. And I do believe that knowledge is important. I also believe that getting a fresh perspective from different people and seeing that turnover and excitement happen is really important. And I think that we should probably do that on city council as well. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, on to our next question. What are the top 3 things that you think need to be changed at the high school, and what solutions can you offer? And this time we'll start with Amy.
So I think we have a fabulous high school. I think that we provide many pathways and opportunities for our students. I know that a lot of the things that we are concerned with as parents and as community members is the stress level for our students. And a couple things that I would love to see is, first of all, I would love to bring back honors grade weighting for freshmen, because when freshmen start out taking those more rigorous classes, it is an academic risk. And I think that them having the opportunity to get the extra grade bump is super important and definitely motivating. I would also say that if we could perhaps bring in someone that could help our seniors with their college counseling or with their college applications. So kind of walking them through the process more. A lot of kids go outside and pay for that. And I think it's a very stressful process. I know that it is a stressful process because I've been through it twice with my kids. And I also think it would be nice to offer a tutoring program at the high school, especially right now, when students really need it the most. And, you know, having someone to turn to after a class or after you've gone through a lesson that you don't understand is really, it's so helpful. And I think that with some of the economic concerns that we have right now, people, you know, they would love to hire a tutor for their kid, but it's.
Thanks, Amy. And now we'll go to, now we will go to Jan.
Unmuted? Okay. I would just like to say, first of all, I didn't get in the last answer. The district has moved forward. The board has moved forward. We're not governed like it's 1990. I mean, this is the current age, and the 21st century we're there. We have responded to requests over the years that come forward from the community, mostly the community of parents and some students. We spent a year researching, doing International Baccalaureate at our high school, and involved a lot of teachers and students. And what we ended up with was that we could not provide that and AP, and they didn't want to give up AP. That's one of the disadvantages of being small. But I like to return to the heart of this question, which is the board governs the district dealing with policy and finance and hiring and evaluating the superintendent, working with budget issues. Site concerns come from the principal and the staff at the sites. It really, in my estimation, it would not be appropriate for me to find problems at any of the individual schools and then bring those forward as a board member saying, we need to change this and here's my solution. That needs to come from the site level. Those things do come from the site level. There, you know, we have a philosophy in this district for many years of continuous improvement, and that I've seen that in action and I've seen it happen. We have 2 new principals starting. They've had that tough start where they haven't been able to meet in person with their staffs. It's a whole different way to start as a new principal. And I'm curious to see what they bring forward as how they assess their.
Thank you, Jan. And Kelly, you're up.
Great, thank you. Yes, I think the role of a school board member is to set the vision for the community's schools. So it's important to keep in mind the vision isn't, you know, going in and acting as administrators or trying to make site-based decisions. Those obviously fall to the site leaders and to the superintendent. I think, you know, right now education isn't business as usual. So, you know, to address problems or issues that might need to be changed are totally different in a post-pandemic educational environment than what we're in right now. You know, I think the reason that that I'm running is really the vision that I have that's forward-looking, that's not site-specific. You know, I think we talked about those in my opening statement. You know, I want to focus on all students succeeding. I think we need to have a broad definition of success. I want to address social intolerance, and I want to advance environmental stewardship. As a parent, I could tell you some of the things that I think need to change. Maybe as a participant in PTA that works directly with site leaders, I could name those off, and I would want to name them off to all 3 grade schools, you know, high school, middle school, and elementary school. So we're not, you know, being unfair to any particular viewers out there. But I really want to emphasize the board is setting the vision, the long-term vision for the school, not the individual policies, not the site decisions. And there's always things to improve. I'm a firm believer in constant improvement. We will find things and improve them, but I don't know that that's the board's job or the focus of what we're speaking about as candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And now we'll go to Sherry.
Hi, thank you. That's a great question. And I think it is possible for the board to be a part of the idea development. You can have town halls and task force committees that have two board members on it, and you don't have a majority, and therefore that would be allowed. And by being a part of these processes, we would be able to absorb the information that maybe the students have, and that maybe that the students have, or perhaps even the parents have. I think I would like to see more diversity across the board. I'd like to see more diversity in our science programs and how they teach the programs. We had a very robust garden project at Thurston in 2012 that did not go forward because it was not part of the administration's vision. And it was very extensive, and it would be a wonderful thing to have that, and then have the high school be able to collaborate with the middle school, act as mentors, but also use it as a learning opportunity and to expand our science programs. I also think that we need to have a more robust restorative justice program. I think that we've had a lot of moments where students have not been, their disciplinary action might not mimic the action of the student. And I think that when we talk to students over and over again, you know, we all know they don't really learn. They learn from hands-on and from being a part of the process, and a restorative justice program would allow that. And then lastly, I'd like to have more diversity curriculum on race and gender and
All right. Thank you, Sherry. And so the next two questions that we had are regarding, the next one is about the top 3 things you think need to be changed at the middle school and what solutions you can offer. And so we'll go with Sherry to start this one off.
Hi, thank you. So the middle school is such a difficult place for our kids, right? There's so much going on. There's so much transition from being the kid at the elementary school to the high school. Cliques change, groups of friends, interests start to develop where you're starting to focus in more on what you're interested in. But I think the middle school needs a lot as well. I think we need a more rigorous academic program. I think after being in the district for 17 years, I still hear over and over again that the middle school's curriculum is not robust enough. I think that this garden that I was talking about at Thurston that they developed in 2012 would have phenomenal opportunities for our children to start planting the seed of the ideas about world hunger, hydroponic growing. They can use it for science and English as well. I also, at the middle school, think that they need more shade structures because we have quite a few students and they don't all have opportunities to sit in the shade, and sometimes they will pull away and go to different areas, and that pulls our community of students apart. So I'd like to see that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And now Kelly.
I think I'll just refer to my prior answer about the vision of the school board, but I will share some of my ideas kind of as a parent with my parent lens on about what we could do at the middle school, what I hear from parents, what I see, what I observe. I do think we need to work on middle school articulation into high school courses. That means what is the rigor in middle school and how does that compare to what's expected of students upon entry into high school? I think that's important. I'd like to look at some of our social emotional data, and I'm very data driven. I'd like to review that and see the areas where our middle school students are struggling and have site leaders work to develop programs in ways that would make sure that we continue to support our middle schoolers there. And I'm so excited to have new leadership at that site. I think sometimes middle school parents drop off and disengage as families. And I'm really optimistic that our new leadership will bring some new ideas on how to improve and retain that strong elementary school family engagement into the middle school years. Because I know that middle school families still want to be involved in just maybe slightly different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And now Jan.
Okay. overall, similar answer to the first one, because I don't perceive that as the role of a board member. It certainly is the role of a parent. And that's something that when I've experienced this also, when you are on the board and you are a parent, for me, it always worked to be very, very careful that I kept those roles separate and distinctly separate and did not try to pull one into the other, because that would be, to me, an abuse of the position as a board member. And it becomes very difficult because sometimes you don't, in a sense, stand up for your child as much as you should, because you don't want to be perceived as the person that's trying to get in influence as a board member. It becomes very, very tricky. I certainly think it's good to have parents on as board members, but it also, it makes the role of a board member harder for that person. I would like to refer back to what Sherry's brought up twice now, which was the garden project. That was an expansive garden project that was planned by a parent. It was a very expensive project. Unfortunately, it went a route of going to seek funding from the PTA, but it needed a lot of district funding as well. As a board member, I was asked, and I went to a school in San Clemente to see what they had done with their program, which was not the same program that was being proposed here. It was more modest, more affordable, and I think out of that, we had the teacher there, Penny Dressler. She has incorporated part of a garden program. It'd be great if the program could be expanded, but the program that was proposed in 2012 was just a much larger scale and much more expensive program.
Thank you, Jan and Amy.
Thank you so much. I think that we can all agree that the role of the board is not to make site decisions. To me, this question is more about getting to know us personally and what are some of the things that excite us and things that we see going on in the schools. Middle school is such a transitional year. Anyone with a middle schooler can definitely attest to this. But I think our middle school does a great job with inspiring our kids, especially through the oral history program and passion project. And I think that giving our middle schoolers an introduction to different careers and vocations is a great way to get them interested and thinking about what they want to do in life. And I also think that plays into what the expectations are of high school teachers and what they expect the students to come in to their classes knowing. And I do think that some of that rigor can be definitely ticked up a bit. I'd also love to see more art-centered opportunities for all the schools. I think that learning about artists and how they grow up and what they accomplished, the hands-on creating of something, art is something that brings out our inner strength and sense of self. And I think it really would provide a great outlet for the inner teenage turmoil of our middle schoolers. And I think it's just a great way for kids to express themselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. All right. What is the best way, excuse me, what is the best way for you to understand the needs and views of stakeholders, especially parents? What steps will you take to ensure a diverse set of opinions are heard and considered? And we will start with Amy again.
Awesome. I think the best way to learn the needs of our stakeholders, especially parents, is to create pathways towards open dialogue and feedback loops. I would suggest providing open calls for task forces and committees to include parents and maybe even students, depending on the topic, so that people don't have to wait to be invited, but can commit to the process. Sometimes these committees are filled with teachers, staff, admin, and parents that are chosen from the same support circles. And I know that there are people in the community who may not have the time to be part of PTA or some of the more lengthy processes that we have going on in our schools, but they really want to belong to a committee to figure out something and contribute their expertise and knowledge base. And I would also include students in the information loop. I think keeping them informed by sending them board meeting agendas that could help them figure out what topics and decisions will be made, and perhaps they can offer their input. So definitely creating these feedback loops and inviting people in is really important to understand what their needs and views are. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jan.
Fine. Got it. Thank you. I believe that we have seen a great increase in what's provided to us from parents and students by using Thought Exchange. That was a great program that came to this district and has provided a lot more input from people. They can go on and put on their own thoughts, but they can also click on to someone else's thoughts. So we get a lot of response. There's always been an attempt, and I will be, if it's considered defensive about this, to communicate, to get communication, to get input. We do have a lot of public comment at our meetings. We all have phones. We all have all our information is publicized. You don't have secret information as to how you can get in touch with a board member. It's on the website. And the changes now with the way the internet is, we have a website and we have a lot of access. Things are posted on the website. I know that some people sometimes have trouble getting on or navigating it, but it's there. You can always call a board member directly. I sometimes miss the days when I would get lots of phone calls because emails are difficult. Emails are not communication. Emails are letters or statements. And it's often, you can be misunderstood in an email on either side. I will have to say that I think something that I wanted to have happen, because we do have those things as board members. We all do that. We used to have a vibrant student rep program a long time ago, and students they had a voice, they were very vocal. We've been able to bring that back the last 2 years. We've had two student board reps.
Thank you, Jan. And Kelly.
Great, thank you guys so much. So this question is, just to restate it, is the best way to understand the needs and views of of stakeholders, but especially parents. And I think I'm uniquely qualified here since, I have had experience leading PTA. PTA is a Parent Teacher Association. And we work, and I have worked as PTA president, as council president, in that role specifically, right? Listening to parents, hearing what their issues are, trying to make changes, trying to understand where they're coming from and work with site leadership. I think I have a very unique set of skills because I've held those leadership roles. I do think at our district, we can continue to evolve, and within our board, how we hear all parents' views. I think even just televising or going to board meetings on Zoom has created so much more interest. And we could take what we learned from that. We could do other virtual forums. We could do short surveys, long surveys. I'm very data driven, and I really look forward to continuing to develop the toolkit. I thought Thought Exchange was so cool, but I bet there's so many other things that are out there that can also help us hear all the different voices. And it's really important to take into account all the voices, not just the loud voices, but all of them. We could do satisfaction surveys, for a very simple example, but I do really value the view of parents, and I have a lot of experience working with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Hi, thank you. So I think that the input from the community is extremely important. And I think it's one of the reasons we're having a hard time right now as a community with what's happening and going on with our schools and the current culture. I think that the opportunities to provide input through Parent Square or through the Thought Exchange was very nice, but there was no way to validate what you thought you might want to see. There was no two-way communication. There was, and those are things that we need. When you have the two-way communication and you bring a variety of people to the table, you're going to get different ideas. I know Kelly earlier had said that a diverse board is really good, and I totally agree with her, because right now we have 4 teachers on the board, and we would have 4 more. We'd still have 4 depending on how the election goes, and that's not a fair representation of our community. So it's really important that we diversify the board. It's important that we bring a diverse group of people to the table to have these conversations, and we need to have conversations before decisions are made, not when things are brought to the table at the board meeting and people are looking and they need to vote on it. It needs to be something that includes people ahead of time. Student input is important, but a lot of parents don't want their students making the decision, but it does help give us a guide of what might be important to them. And I think, again, public task forces, you can have 2 school board members on them, and you can even have an open call committee with all 4 board members there. They just can't discuss amongst themselves. So there's a lot of ways that we can improve the communication.
thank you, Sherry. All right, on to our next question. What decision have you made in the past 12 months that you regret most, whether it's a professional decision or a personal decision, and explain why? And we will start with Sherry.
Hi. This is a funny question. I really thought about this for a long time, and I came to the conclusion of what I really kind of how I live my life. I don't think there are decisions that I regret. I think there are opportunities that we can learn from. I think that and this goes across the board, these are things that we can bring into the schools as well. But I really don't believe that we should be beating ourselves up. I mean, I think as parents, we can do that enough without having reason that's put right in front of us. But I also would like to say that I think I regret signing up for this election as a Democrat, because I didn't realize that we could state that we were non-party. I thought we had to create a part, be a part of a party. And being that I've always voted Dem, that made sense to me. I just got my voter's card and it said no party preference. I thought that's probably a better idea, because where I come to the table as a community member is usually straight up the middle. I gather the facts and go forward. So it helps me not to have regrets when I speak before the board, because facts are truth. And that's much easier to work with than opinions of our own that we might regret later. And it helps us come forward with really good solutions. So that's what I would have to say.
Thank you, Sherry. And Kelly.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, this was a fun question, right? Because you probably want to hear something salacious, a bad decision that we each made. But I don't know if any of us are going to give you that. I will talk a little bit about decision making. There was another question on an unpopular decision, and I wanted to talk about not letting my 12-year-old have a smartphone, because that is definitely an unpopular decision in my household right now. But in terms of decision making, yes, I am very, very data driven. If anybody knows me, I'm very calm, I'm very level headed. I look at all the facts, I look at all the data, I research things sometimes to the nth degree. I try and take all that in. I don't get swept up with emotion. I try and make a good decision with the broadest set of views. That's my decision making process. So I feel like the process is sound. Now, if we get down the road and there's a decision that needs to be revised, I wouldn't call it a bad decision, but a decision that needs to be revised, I think I have the humility and the professionalism to do that. And I think that serving on our school board requires all those things. We need to be calm and level-headed. We need to make decisions based on broad views. We need to be, have this humility and, be willing to serve our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Jan.
Thank you. I looked at this from the frame of board decisions, and I think similar to what's been stated, that you make the best decisions at the time with the information that you have. I do disagree that we don't receive input before we make decisions. That's why you often see a very, very important item come as information first before it comes for an actual vote. Or it can be tabled and come back if you find you need more information. We take public comments first, always first, so that we can reflect on those and we can act on those as board members. But as far as sometimes then as time goes by, it's like Monday morning quarterbacking. You see that didn't go as we intended. And I have to say the recent one that was supported was doing the electronic submission of comments to board meetings. That put us in a situation where basically we were being held hostage by public comment. A lot of the comments were anonymous. The comments became very mean-spirited, very rude, and someone even said a board member has to read the comment about themselves, which is just cutting them to shreds. It was very, very unpleasant. And at one meeting, we were slightly under a 3-hour meeting, 2 hours and 15 minutes were read public comments. So we left that, we now have gone to doing what City Council's doing. It's a little more complicated, it takes more time, it takes more people to put it on, but now the people are, in a sense, like they were in an in-person meeting. They're involved at the meeting at the time. They speak on the item at the time. And the meanness has really dropped off. So the board has been a little beat up, and it's nice to leave that behind.
Thank you, Jan. And Amy.
So I'm a parent, so there's a lot of regrets that I'm sure I could tick off in decisions I've made. But I would say that it's really not about having regret, but about how I handle the situation if I've been involved in a misunderstanding or if I've made an error. And I would agree that humility, it's an important part of our humanity. And when I have found myself in the situation where I've made a mistake, I immediately acknowledge it. I explain, what or why it happened. I apologize and take steps to remedy the situation. We all make mistakes. We all fall short of our own expectations, and dealing with people from a sense of compassion and mercy is paramount. Righting the wrong and fixing the problem is definitely the only way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have time for one more question, Jimmy?
We do.
All right. All right, our final question. What 3 decisions, if any, has a school board or school district made that you disagree with over the last 2 years? And we will start with Sherry.
So I'm very familiar with our board, and I've been in front of our board maybe over 40 times in the last 10 years. I've participated in their study sessions. I've participated in a lot of committees that I've been invited to. The calendar committee, the social and emotional parent committee, even LCAP at the district level, I was selected to. There are so many things that I think are upsetting that have started to happen in the last couple of years that it is one of the reasons why I chose to run. The start of the calendar is where I feel like it began, and I was a part of that committee, and I was not happy with how the solution came about because they had brought a committee together. They had a lot of problems and conflicts, and rather than send it back to committee, they gave it to the administration, which basically put forth the original plan to begin with. Because I was part of the committee, I knew that. I really disagree with the continual lawsuits that we have. I would love to see us use mitigation as a better solution. I think that everything is negotiable, and I think that we need to come together as a community and find solutions, not become so litigious. Last year alone, there was $300,000 in law fees for just the lawyers that we had, and then we had all of the special needs reimbursements is what they're calling it, but it was really associated with lawsuits, and that's not okay. And then the last time we had a board meeting, or last summer, they had stated that we had $900,000 paid in lawsuits.
Thank you, Sherry. And I apologize, I flipped this order, but we'll just go with it. So the next one will be Kelly.
Wonderful. Okay, so 3 decisions that we disagree with that the board made over the last 2 years. I'll give you some things that I disagree with, but I want to make sure that for everybody that's listening out there, we want to set, as school board members, a vision for the future. So we could go back and try and undo decisions that were made, or we could be looking forward on how we're continuously improving our schools and providing more for our students. But I will try and answer the question. Specifically this summer, I got involved with Dr. Valoria and tried to bring our PTA leaders at each of the 4 sites into the conversation on school opening, mostly just to share what we were experiencing and reflect on our experiences with emergency distance learning. I put together the webinar with over 700 families attending and taking questions and answering them. And out of that, I did urge the district to try and collect more data on what worked for families and what didn't. And I really wish we could have had that data. That was a decision that obviously the district didn't agree with. And I wish they would have, but we moved on and we continue to collaborate and be professional with our district leadership. But again, I think this hyper focus on the past doesn't serve us well as a district. I think we're in a pandemic. We need to focus on getting our kids learning in the best ways forward and thinking about what we're doing as we move forward into the next 2 years instead of looking back on the past 2 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And Jan?
Okay, got it. This is kind of an interesting side note. I specifically asked to have Sherry on the calendar committee because the first time we had the calendar vote, which was rescinded, she was one of the vocal opponents of that. And so to get the voices that are not just the ones you think will be lockstep with what you want to do, you asked to have people put on the committee that you know will have a difference of opinion. I would just say I can't say that I disagree with opinions over the last 2 years because I don't know that I've been in a position to have a no vote, which would mean I disagreed with the decision. That has happened to me. It hasn't happened very much. I'd have to go back a number of years. But what I will say in general is that it's important as a board member to work through things, to bring things back, to rework them. At times you get accused of having too many unanimous votes. But that's not a bad thing, because if that means that you've worked through things, you've compromised, you've reworked it, you brought it back again, you took more input, you said, oh, well, we didn't consider that, and you go over it again, you end up with a better product, which is a better decision. And so hopefully then you have a board that is more often in agreement than not in agreement. And so that's why I find myself really having to stretch, to think, and again, I agree. It's time to move forward. It's time to look forward, and there is always room for improvement. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan and Amy.
So the things that I brought up to the board, I believe affect our students and their educational and goal-seeking outcomes. I have been up with the board talking about the pulling of the honors grade weighting. And I really think that it was a difficult situation for the students involved because it affected what classes that they decided to take and did not decide to take. And I think it kind of threw a lot of those kids through a loop. The other thing, of course, would be the adoption of this trimester educational model, which I find to divide the students. I think that you know, telling people you either do this so you can go back to campus, or if you would like to take the traditional 6-class model, you're not coming back to campus. I think that there are other options that we could have chosen and different things we could have done. And I think that by the time that we got to the point where the decision was being made, there was no more room for discussion, unfortunately. I do believe in moving forward. I would agree that if you're constantly looking backward, it's hard to move forward, but sometimes you need to look back at some of the decisions and the things that have been done and learn from them and figure out what could have been done differently. Perhaps there was something that wasn't the best decision, and you know, fixing that, remedying it, and then, you know, definitely moving forward with that in your mind.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to go off script for just a couple of minutes here, Ginny. And what I'd like to do is just end this on a positive note. And so I'd like for each of you to, this was not on your list of questions, but if you could share something that you are grateful for, that we'd love to hear that from you too. So why don't we go ahead and we will start with Amy.
Thank you so much. I am really grateful for my family. I am so grateful for my friends as well. This has been such an interesting time, to say the least. And I think that so many of us are watching so many things in turmoil, and having your family around you and your friends supporting you is so important. And also, I have to admit, I am thankful to have the opportunity to run for school board candidate. It's not an easy decision to make, obviously, and I'm equally grateful to my family and friends who have supported me and been so kind during this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jan.
I am grateful to this terrific school district. There are, if you listen to the issues that we're talking about tonight, they are compared to issues that other districts have. We are so lucky here. We have such a great demographic. We have terrific students. We have very involved parents. We have a very supportive community. We have terrific staff. So I'm grateful for all those things. It's so important to have gratitude. And it's important to think every day that what you're grateful for. So that's a great thing to end with, Pam. And I think that I am appreciative and grateful that I've been able to serve this district. I'm very, very dedicated to this district and the education that we provide and the impact it has on so many lives going forward. But I also am grateful on a small scale to occasionally around town when that person stops me and says, thank you, because it really means a lot. And so I have a lot of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And Kelly.
Thanks. Yes, I think it's a great question because as we're all swept up in our emotions as parents about what's happening in education, it's hard to get outside of our bubble, right? It's hard to, and especially when you're a school board candidate and you're only hyper focused on what's happening here. And sometimes we see what's happening around us in the world, what's happening through the equity lens of our least privileged children suffering the most, what's happening in other districts as teachers are being laid off, yet we're hiring 8. What's happening when, people can't get a computer or can't get hotspots, or even worse, like their neighborhood doesn't even have high-speed internet coming in through a pipe. So I am sometimes, and a lot of days, overwhelmed by how grateful I am that we're here in this town with this district, with these leaders, with these fellow parents, with these amazing other people we're even running against, because this is unusual, people. And I think we have to really sometimes take ourselves out of that and remember how lucky we are. And we all do want the best for our children, but there is a lot to be thankful for. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Hi, thank you. I have to mirror what everybody has said. I am so grateful for my family. I have the most amazing, supportive husband that allows me to do things like this, run for school board and represent our community. I am grateful for our schools. We moved to Laguna Beach for our schools because our schools are so well known. And I'm grateful for the ability to have been so involved, because I think that, we only have such a short period of time with our kids, and to be able to be a part of the process, to be a part of the solution is very, very, I just feel so blessed to be able to do that. And I think that there's a lot about going forward, and I agree with that, but I think we really need to learn from our own issues and some issues that have happened in the past. And so for that ability to reflect on ourselves is something, and being comfortable with that is something that I'm really grateful for, because I think it takes a lot to be able to admit if you've made a mistake. I think it takes a lot to stand up in front and fight for what you believe in. And I like to see when the community does that. And I'm really grateful that I have been able to have this opportunity. And I love the fact that I've been able to talk to people. I've had to explore my own beliefs. I've gotten to meet new people. And it just reminds me of how great it is to live in Laguna Beach, and especially after being holed up for so long. But it is important to show gratitude, because when we express gratitude every single day, then we receive gratitude and we have a wonderful, happy life instead of always finding what's wrong. But we do need to fix issues before we go forward so that we can learn from them and make everything better. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Pam, at this time, I just wanted to take a moment before we move into the final remarks by our candidates. I just wanted to share with everybody the web address for the Boys and Girls Club and for the KXFM radio station. Starting with the KXFM radio station, it is kxfmradio.org. And the Boys and Girls Club email address, although I should have it emblazoned in my memory, Pam, what is it?
it's bgclagunabeach.org.
That's bgclagunabeach.org. And I know that we kind of surprised everybody with that gratefulness question. So rather than sticking to the chess clock and being done in 2 minutes at 8:30, I do think the callers and the viewers would like to hear for 2 minutes from each of the candidates. So Pam, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, so for closing remarks, let's see. We will start with Sherry.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for this evening. I thought the questions were wonderful. I thought they were very thought-provoking, and I wish we had time to answer more of them. It's really important that we do go forward, and I'm referring to this because it's come up a couple times, and I definitely agree. But when we don't fix the systemic problems that we have, we're not going forward in a healthy way. And there are issues that we have. I'm not a politician. I am a mom that has been in this district for 17 years. I am passionate. I am fiery. I ask hard questions. I know that makes people uncomfortable, but when we ask hard questions, we're able to peel back the top layer and really find out what the roots of the problems are. And that's really important. I bring transparency. I want to bring light to issues that exist. I want to bring accountability. I have a platform of inclusivity, of anti-racial education. That's been on my platform since the very beginning. And after all of these years of being in front of the board, I've been there over 40 times. I knew it was time for me to come forward and be a voice of change. We need a voice that represents all. We have 4 teachers on the board. We have to have diversity. And if we don't have diversity, then we're not going to be able to represent the community fairly, because we're still going to have our own bias in our listening and in our decision making. And we need a broader scope. So thank you very much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really, really appreciate it. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Sherry. And Kelly?
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, I think I want to close in just giving, all the parents out there, a shout out. This is a really hard period in education. This is the hardest period we've had in education in many, many decades, if not since we, created the concept of public education in 1850 with Horace Mann. So, my heart goes out to all the families listening, that we're here, and I think we're running as school board candidates to serve our students well. I believe that I'm a calm, level-headed, smart, and obviously the most qualified candidate. I think if you've worked with me, as a PTA leader, as a site principal, as the superintendent, whom I've all worked on transformational projects in our district. We didn't get to any of those, but hopefully you guys know which ones those are, that you would agree that I'm very collaborative, that I'm very prepared, that I'm very professional. And even when I first get answers that I don't like, I pivot, I listen, I revise, and I keep going after what I believe is great for our schools and our students. I think you should know that I'm a very hard worker. I'm always informed and abreast of trends. I have a master's degree in education. I pledge to everybody here and to the greater community not to get swept up in the emotion of each decision, but really to make decisions based on everyone's input, the spoken and the unspoken, with that broad view. I'm very data-driven, I'm student-focused, I have a long-term vision for our district, and I encourage viewers to go onto my website. It's kelly4schoolboard.org to learn about me, to get educated, and of course, to vote Kelly on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Jan?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for providing us this opportunity. For all the people that watched, it's really helpful for them. I would have to say that I really hope that I will be allowed to continue to serve this district. I feel I have served the district well, providing leadership, but also providing the aspect of being prepared and studying the issues and listening and listening and listening. I think sometimes for me, we've had a lot of difficult issues over the years. You can never anticipate where it's going to come from, what's going to be the blow up. But what's always important for me is to know that when we have parents become passionate, it's because their child is at their heart. And as parents, that's our role, and that's what we stand up for. So I always keep that in my mind, even when the times and the comments get difficult. I do think it's important, though, when the questions are answered, that there's an acceptance of the answer and that there is the ability to move forward. I would say that, of course, this is a non-paid position. This district, and it's something I was involved in early on, the Ed Code allows you to take a stipend based on the enrollment of your district. At that time, we were in a tough financial situation, which happens periodically as things cycle through. And the board I was on then made the decision that we would not take the stipend because we did not want to take any money away from the education of the students in the district. I have championed that ever since. It's come up a few times since then, and I've always been adamant that no, we don't do that because we don't take that money when it could go to the students' education. I just have been privileged to serve the district as long as I have. I came from a family of teachers. The diversity on the board, to have diversity, we all are diverse. The members now who are on the board who have done teaching in any various capacities have an inside a view of education that is helpful in my mind. But also we are diverse in many other ways. How we grew up, how we were parented ourselves, what things we were involved in, what our own ethnic backgrounds are. There is diversity there. And I think that just because we have all had a similar career path does not take away from that diversity. And I look at, Amy said she's a paraeducator, and Kelly has had a teaching in her background.
Thank you, Jan. And Amy.
Thank you again for having us in this forum and providing this opportunity. And again, thank you to all the people who have watched this evening. I know that this is taking time out of your family time and work and free time. But we're really blessed to live in a community that puts such a strong emphasis on education, you know, with only 4 schools that's community funded. And I know that as parents, we're all invested in our children's educational experience, and that we all strive to provide excellence and opportunity for all of our students. The education that they receive here is what's going to launch them into their future careers, the scientists, the innovators, the developers, the founders. And so it's important that we uphold all of the things that we hold dear in our district. I believe that I'm the candidate who can achieve this goal and bring better communication strategies, higher accountability, and innovative leadership to our district community. And I would be honored to have your vote in November. And thank you all again for coming this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And I guess I just want to share what I'm grateful for, which is to be part of such a caring and supportive community, especially when it comes to our most precious and vulnerable resource, our young people. And I am very grateful that we have such a strong and savvy and compassionate slate of nominees or candidates here. And I want to thank everyone for participating. And I just want to remind everyone, go out and vote. Thank you.
Tyler, did you want to say something? Okay. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Boys and Girls Club, I want to thank all 4 of our candidates tonight for taking the time. I want to thank all the parents out there who took time to ask questions, to be involved in the community. You know, oftentimes we hear that people don't vote and they're not involved. Well, I don't see that here. I see that involvement, and I think that civic mindedness will rub off on our youth. I hope it will. I also just want to say what a privilege it is to know all 4 of these candidates, and how proud I am to have each of your names and phone numbers on my favorites list. Sometimes you don't like to hear from me, but I always like to hear from you. And all 4 of you are just truly exceptional. And at the Boys and Girls Club, we really are proud to know each of you. So thank you very much for your civic mindedness and for your great service to our community.
Thank you, Jimmy.
So much.
Till next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, Jan.
Bye.
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 Thank you so much,
you.
everyone.